Stein and Tate, a married couple, along with their young son Nemo, had been living in the city for a long time. However, they had now decided to take a break from civilization and settle in the remote Swedish forest, where not even radio signals reached. Upon seeing the house they had rented in advance, the spouses were thrilled. Here no one would disturb them, and they could all enjoy a quiet, peaceful life together. Tate looked around the plot. In the evening, the spouses recorded an audio diary. Tate explained that, like many couples in Copenhagen, they were tired of constant stress and had decided to see if they could survive outside society and live in harmony with nature. Perhaps here they would find a new definition for the word family. Stein supports her husband in this endeavor, feeling that the city is too noisy and busy. She graduated from the literature faculty but still cannot find herself. They have a whole year to search for themselves. The recordings that Tate will regularly send to his editor, Emil, will be their only contact with the outside world. It is both frightening and mesmerizing at the same time. The spouses are here also because they want to learn to be completely honest with each other. Tate, who works in journalism, constantly has to lie, and his wife doesn't like it. However, Tate doesn't see anything wrong with this. In his opinion, a person shouldn't set the bar for their moral principles too high, otherwise they might start hating everyone around them. And so began the new life of the family. During the day, they worked on the plot, and then they walked by the lake. What else could one need for happiness? Tate shared in the audio diary that he had spent most of his life in Copenhagen, where he knew the name of every street. But he knew nothing about nature. Stein began writing a book, hoping that nature would inspire her. Before dinner, the father and son went fishing. Later, putting family photos and a flash drive with audio recordings into an envelope, Tate signed it and put it in the mailbox. The next day, Stein noticed that there was someone on the opposite shore of the lake. The spouses were puzzled, as there were no other houses nearby. Stein continued writing and felt that she was getting pretty good at it. Tate was very happy for his wife and suggested celebrating this. In the annex, Tate found not only wine but also a rifle. Stein found it disturbing because there was nothing mentioned about a rifle in the advertisement. But Tate was enthusiastic about going hunting someday. The spouses raised a toast to their new life. This is what they had always lacked: nature, fresh air and solitude. However, in reality, things weren't as good as it seemed. Tate wanted tenderness and attention from his wife, but she asked him to stop. Deep down she still can't forgive her husband. The next day, Stein's writing process stalled. In the evening, the couple again recorded the audio diary together, discussing the events of the past week. Stein confessed that she was worried that they weren't entirely alone here. For example, today she saw smoke on the other side of the lake. Tate isn't sure it's worth mentioning because it undermines the whole purpose of the podcast he had envisioned. In his opinion, one can be sincere while keeping quiet about insignificant details. Stein ironically told her husband that he was used to passing off edited material as reality. Tate realized that the wife still couldn't forgive his infidelity and now wants to expose him to the whole world as a liar and a traitor. Stein simply walked away. The next morning, trying to keep herself together, Stein first played with the son, and then tried to work on her book. Nemo was bored, so he started interfering with his mother and started to get cranky. To distract her son, Stein gave him a phone, despite the agreement not to use any gadgets here. Later, Stein brought fresh water supplies into the house. She doesn't like that the husband neglected cooking dinner and instead went for a run. The spouses also had a dispute: who would be looking after Nemo tomorrow? Because of the son, Stein couldn't focus on work, and Tate couldn't take him along tomorrow because he had a recording scheduled in the forest. Meanwhile, Nemo continued misbehaving. The parents were very tired of him. While Stein was doing some heavy physical work, Tate listened to their latest recording. And although Tate promised his wife not to send this recording to the editor, he decided to do so. The next morning, putting another envelope in the mailbox, Tate saw many other envelopes there. Meanwhile, Stein was walking with the son in the forest, and at some point she heard a woman's voice. It was her own voice, asking Nemo not to run away. Seeing a woman ahead, Stein hid behind a tree. A few seconds later the woman disappeared. Nemo was missing, and Stein began to call out to him in a panic, wandering through the forest. Finally Nemo responded, but Stein still didn't know which direction to go. When Stein saw the son, she rushed to him, unable to hold back tears. The boy was behaving strangely, as if something had changed in him. Tate brought the letters home, but he was distracted by the son's crying. Stein said she didn't know what was happening to him. While Tate sat with the son, Stein tried to compose herself. Night fell, but Nemo didn't stop crying. Stein was scared, but Tate was sure it would pass soon. However, time passed, and Nemo still didn't calm down. The next day, he was not himself and kept looking out the window. Stein asked the son what happened in the forest yesterday. Nemo didn't want to be near her, saying she wasn't his mom. By evening, Nemo became even more restless, continuing to say that Stein was not his real mother. Stein was getting increasingly scared. At some point, the same golden ornament fell out of the pocket of the son, just like the one Stein was wearing right now. Something strange was clearly happening here. During the night, Stein had a nightmare about seeing herself from the outside, only lifeless. Tate doesn't understand what's happening with the son and why he keeps repeating the same thing. Stein confessed to the husband that she lost their son in the forest yesterday when she saw some woman and got distracted. Tate speculated that the son might have a psychological trauma, but Stein doesn't think the problem lies there. Stein also shared that the woman yesterday calling for Nemo. Now Stein is scared and wants to go home. Tate thought that the wife was just looking for an excuse to leave because she didn't want to forgive him. Upon hearing this, Stein yelled at the husband. She couldn't believe he kept seeking justification after his affair destroyed their marriage. Stein began to pack her things, intending to leave with the son tomorrow. Tate lost his temper, shouting that he wouldn't let her. Furthermore, Tate couldn't stop thinking about those envelopes. Inside were flash drives with recordings of their own voices. Those people, whoever they were, said the same thing. Tate didn't understand what was happening. Opening the remaining envelopes, he saw photographs of people who looked like him and his wife. This made Tate agree to leave right now. Calmly, Nemo fell asleep in the car. They didn't wait for morning and drove straight through the darkness. At some point, the spouses realized they had returned to the same place. Perhaps Stein, who was driving, simply turned the wrong way and made a loop. However, the same thing happened next time. They were going in circles. The spouses entered the house to find a map of the area. Suddenly the satellite phone rang. It was alarming, but Stein picked up the receiver, hearing her own voice. Tate suggested that the signal might have just echoed and proposed asking those people on the other side of the lake for help. Stein didn't like this idea at all, but they had no other choice. Without waking the son, they set off in the boat, but in the end they returned to their home again. Stein remarked aloud that they didn't seem to pull the curtains when they left. However, inside, everything was exactly the same. Opening her laptop, Stein said she didn't remember writing this. While Tate went to put their son to bed, Stein heard strange noises and approached the window, seeing her reflection. But when the reflection didn't mimic her movements, Stein screamed. Tate rushed to her screams and was shocked to see outside the window, first a doppelganger of his wife, and then his own. The sounds woke Nemo up. The parents didn't want him to see this. Suddenly the doppelgangers entered the house. The second Tate had a rifle in his hands. The doppelgangers threatened them, demanding the return of Nemo. Of course the spouses refused to give up their son. Forcing them into the house, the second Tate, still holding the rifle, demanded answers about who they were and why they looked so much like them. When the spouses said they were from the exact same house and that Nemo was their son, it angered the doppelganger, and he ordered them to remove their jewelry. Now Nemo was with the doppelgangers. All night the couple sat locked in the garage, and in the morning, the second Stein entered with the rifle, ordering her copy to go outside. It became apparent that they weren't just similar but the same person, because their biographies matched completely. Taking advantage of the moment, Stein took the rifle from the doppelganger and knocked her out, after which she put on the copy's gold jewelry. When Tate's doppelganger appeared, he was sure it was his wife in front of him. Stein said she had to knock out the doppelganger because she attacked first. By the way, the rifle turned out to be unloaded. They locked Stein's doppelganger together with the first Tate in the garage. The second Tate asked the wife not to act so recklessly again. For Stein, the most important thing was to reunite with her son. The boy asked why he had two moms. Stein still doesn't fully understand what's happening. When the son fell asleep, Stein approached the second Tate and said that everything would be okay. He replied that they would get divorced, as she wanted. Tate realizes he's at fault, but what's worse is that his wife doesn't love him. And Tate can't change that. Stein said she was very sorry. Stein couldn't forgive him and wanted him to feel what she felt. Perhaps now it's a chance for them to start over. Tate admitted that even after his affair was revealed, he kept texting his mistress. Stein is ready to forgive him. Tate asks himself if it's possible that Nemo also has a doppelganger. Stein said that it wasn't. She and Tate indulged in passion right on the grass. Waiting for the husband's doppelganger to fall asleep, Stein quietly left the room and took the rifle. Nemo suddenly woke up, so Stein had to return to the room. When she woke up in the morning, Tate was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her for a long time. He already guessed that she was not his wife. The loaded rifle in the kitchen confirmed it. So their entire conversation yesterday was a lie. The second Tate opened the garage and released his real wife and the doppelganger, then threw the rifle into the lake. Obviously they need to find another way out of this situation. At the table they discussed what happened to them. No one has a logical explanation for this. The first Tate suggested that he might have psychosis, so all of this is hallucinations. But the doppelganger of Stein, who once wrote an article about parallel universes, has another theory: perhaps two realities have overlapped. The question is, why is Nemo the only one? Over these 2 days they searched the entire forest but still haven't found anyone. At night, Tate ordered the wife to follow him. Outside he told her his plan: to return to the first house and retrieve the rifle. In his opinion, after the doppelgangers locked them in the garage for a day, the problem couldn't be solved peacefully. However, Stein didn't consider it a good idea, which led to a quarrel. Stein didn't go after her husband, returning to the house. Her solitude in the kitchen was interrupted by the doppelganger. They drank wine and had a heart-to-heart talk. Stein, both the first and the second, still doesn't understand why she didn't divorce Tate after his affair. Perhaps she hoped he would change, and life would regain meaning. Later, all four of them recorded the audio diary, recounting the strangeness that had befallen them. As evidence they took photographs. Suddenly outside, Tate attacked his doppelganger out of nowhere, and a fight broke out between them. Fortunately the guys managed to stop in time. Meanwhile, Stein and her doppelganger continued to drink. For both of them, it was strange to see an exact copy of themselves. Alcohol made them feel uninhibited. Morning came. Stein and her doppelganger continued to discuss what a bad husband Tate was. Stein had sacrificed everything for this family, but got nothing in return. Later, upon hearing growling in the forest, Stein and Tate went to check what was wrong and saw their dog attacking its doppelganger. Suddenly the dog ran into the forest and disappeared behind an invisible wall. When Stein and the second Tate crossed through this invisible boundary, it didn't work for them. They figured out that they could only escape if their duplicates were no longer alive. Perhaps this was their only chance. On the other hand, how could they decide who would live and who wouldn't? They had no intention of telling the others about the discovery in the forest. Upon returning home, Stein took a sharp object from the kitchen and hid it. After that heartfelt conversation, she would prefer to be with Tate's doppelganger rather than Tate himself. When the first Tate wanted to hug his wife, she asked him not to. Angry, Tate left the house. Stein followed him and took his life. It happened quietly and quickly. At that moment, she saw her lifeless duplicate in the forest. The second Tate had already taken care of everything. After that, taking Nemo with them, Stein and the second Tate prepared to start a new life together. On the way to the border between parallel worlds, Stein asked Tate to stop the car. In the grass she saw Nemo's glove. However, Stein didn't tell her husband about it, and they continued on their way. After crossing the border, Nemo didn't disappear. Stein and Tate could breathe a sigh of relief. The nightmare was over. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.